Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the modern neuroscience of fear, drawing on the incredible work of Stanford neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman. We're going to look at the actual circuits that control fear and, maybe more importantly, how you can start to take control and rewire them. We all feel fear, right? It's just part of being human. But what if it wasn't a life sentence? What if you could learn to control it, to really change how it affects you? Well, it turns out modern neurobiology is showing us that this is actually possible. And the way to do it is, well, it's pretty counterintuitive. It's about working with your brain's biology, not fighting against it. Okay, so before we can learn to rewire this thing, we've got to understand the machinery. Fear isn't some kind of weakness or character flaw. Nope. It's a powerful and incredibly ancient biological circuit that was designed for one thing and one thing only: to keep you alive. Dr. Huberman calls this the threat reflex. And the key thing to get here is that this reflex is, by design, kind of dumb. It's a generalized alarm system. Its whole job is to be super fast, not super specific. It's all about reacting first and asking questions later. That's why the fear of a tough conversation can feel, in your body, a lot like the fear of a tiger in the grass. It's the same generic alarm bell ringing. So let's meet the key players in this whole operation. First up, you've got the amygdala. Think of it as your brain's super-sensitive smoke detector. It screams, "Danger!" before you even know what's happening. That scream instantly triggers the HPA axis, which is basically your body's chemical factory, and it just floods you with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. Then, finally, the prefrontal cortex, who we'll call the CEO of your brain, can come online and provide what's called top-down control to figure out if it's a real fire or just burnt toast. So we've got this system down, but this right here, this is where most of us get the whole overcoming fear thing completely wrong. We think the goal is just to get rid of it, to erase it completely. Here's the hard truth. You can't just delete a bad memory. Your brain literally does not have a delete button for these powerful, emotionally charged experiences. The pathways that get burned into your brain during a scary event are incredibly strong. Trying to ignore them or push them down is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It's exhausting, and eventually it's just going to pop right back up, probably with even more force. And this brings us to what is, honestly, the most crucial point from all of Dr. Huberman's work on this topic. The only path forward is replacement, not erasure. We have to work with the brain's wiring. The whole game isn't about fighting the old memory. It's about building a brand new, stronger, and more positive pathway that your brain actually prefers to take. This really lays it out, doesn't it? Trying to fight a memory is a losing battle. In fact, you often just end up reinforcing the very thing you're trying to get rid of. But the right way, the strategy that actually works with your neurobiology, is to attach a new positive meaning to that old trigger. It's not about trying to unring the bell. It's about teaching your brain that the bell can also mean that something wonderful is about to happen. So, the big question is, how do we actually do this? Well, the solution is this really precise two-step process that lets you actively get in there and rewire your brain's response. Think of this like a 1-2 punch for dealing with fear. First, you extinguish the memory's emotional charge. You take the sting out of it, you neutralize it. Then, once that alarm has been turned off, you go back in and you actively write a new, much more empowering ending to that story. Okay, so step 1 is called extinction. And therapies like prolonged exposure are built on this exact principle. It involves retelling the story of the fearful event over and over in a safe environment. Now, the first few times, your body's alarm system, the racing heart, the sweaty palms, it's going to go haywire. But with each retelling, the intensity of that physical response gets weaker and weaker. You are literally uncoupling the memory from the threat reflex. As Huberman says, you turn a terrible story into a terrible, boring story. But just neutralizing the fear, that's only half the job. The really critical second step is replacement. This is where you actively link that old trigger to a new feeling of victory or accomplishment. And this whole process taps into the brain's powerful dopamine system. When you attach a positive outcome, your brain releases dopamine, which is like a big sticky note that says, "Hey, pay attention. This new thing is awesome. Let's do this instead." It literally paves a new superhighway that your brain will naturally want to take from now on. Now, what's really amazing is that you can actually speed up this entire rewiring process. And you can do it with a tool that is going to sound, honestly, kind of nuts. It sounds completely backward, doesn't it? Why on earth would you add more stress to a system that's already feeling overloaded by fear? But it turns out the latest science is showing that short, deliberate, self-directed doses of stress can be one of the most powerful tools we have for taking back control over our fear circuits. Dr. Huberman often points to this really remarkable study that was done on mice. For these animals that were dealing with symptoms of chronic stress and fear, you know what reversed their symptoms? Just 5 minutes a day of a different, sharp, acute stress. Think about that for a second. It wasn't getting rid of stress that healed them. It was a short, controlled dose of it. So what's the logic here? How does this actually work? Well, when you choose to enter a state of stress, like through intense breathing, jumping into a cold shower, or doing a really hard workout, you completely flip the script. You're no longer the victim of the stress response, you're the one pulling the levers. This act puts your brain's CEO, the prefrontal cortex, in the driver's seat, and it learns how to calm down the alarmist smoke detector, the amygdala. You are, at a deep biological level, teaching your brain that you are in control of the machine. And this, right here, this is the single most important takeaway of this whole thing. The power isn't in the cold water or the intense exercise. The magic is in your agency. It's the fact that you decided to hit the go button. This self-directed entry into alertness teaches your brain that the feeling of adrenaline, of a racing heart, these aren't just things that happen to you. They are states that you can command, that you can control, and that you can navigate safely. And that knowledge, that feeling of control, recalibrates your entire fear system from the top down. At the end of the day, fear is a learned behavior. It's just a set of really strong neural pathways that your brain built based on past experiences. And the beautiful thing about that is, because it was learned, it can be unlearned, overwritten, and replaced. The neuroscience is giving us a user manual to our own minds, showing us how to become the architects of our own internal world. So the question is no longer whether it's possible. The real question is, what will you teach your brain next?